Okay. So thanks everyone for coming. My name is James Jacobs. I'm the U.S. Government Information Librarian at Green Library. I'm coming to you, as you can see, not from Green Library right now, but from my home. And thanks again, Grace, for contacting me and getting us going with doing this workshop, this Zotero workshop. I did send out some information to everyone, and I hope that you got that. Let me put it in the chat here. I have a Google Doc notes.
Oh, James, I just pasted your Google
okay.
Doc.
Good, thanks, Ron. That's the bit.ly link that goes to the Google Doc. So this is a workshop that I do about once or twice a year when there's interest. So I'm really glad that there's interest here. There's a bunch of people from GSE, from Earth System Sciences, from CHPR, from TAPS and English. So we're a really diverse group today. And so if you do have any questions, if I'm looking into a database that you're not familiar with and you'd prefer me to look at a different database, let me know, and I can do that as well. My colleagues Ron Nakau, Zach Painter, and Kathy Kearns are going to keep an eye on the chat. So if there are any questions that you have as I'm speaking and demoing Zotero, just put them in the chat, and they'll try to deal with them, or we'll try to deal with them after I present. My goal is to keep the demo portion to about 30 minutes, and then we'll let you go and do some hands-on stuff and try to break things and try to troubleshoot the things that you break. So how does that sound? And is everybody okay on hearing me? Is my volume okay? Good, excellent. So let me start by sharing my screen here. There we go. So as I said, this is the URL for the workshop, bit.ly/Zotero-workshop. And what you get is this. This Google Doc. So what we're going to do is talk about, I like to talk about it in terms of bibliographic citation management, not manager, because the concepts of collecting citations for your work is similar, but there are lots of different citation managers, and they basically do about the same thing. So there's Zotero and Mendeley and EndNote and RefWorks and papers and I don't know, lots of other things out there. I'm going to focus on Zotero because for me, it works the best for my workflow because I do a lot of my work on the open web, and Zotero works really well with the open web. And so what bibliographic citation management is collecting the citations you need to do your work, to do your research, to write your papers, managing that whole process of the bibliographic citation, you know, all of those, what we in the library world call metadata. That is the author, the title, the journal name, the article name, the volume, all of that information that you need to build your footnotes and your bibliographies. A manager like Zotero works really well because you can easily change the citation style. You know, if you're writing a paper and one professor wants you to write it using Chicago Manual of Style, and another person wants you to use APA or MLA, you can flip a switch in Zotero, and using the same citations, you can change the style. sort of on the fly. I'll show that later on, but it's really what makes these tools really valuable, because it simplifies the collection process and simplifies the writing process. So those are the two keys there. As a workshop attendee in the past said, I can see the potential for awesomeness. I thought that was a great quote, so I like to lead with that. Zotero is a free open source citation manager. It was developed at George Mason University. I like it for that purpose, because it's A, free, and B, open source, meaning that anyone who is interested can go in and look at the source code. They can add pieces to the citation to Zotero. If they have an idea for a plugin, they can write a plugin for it. There are other citation managers out there that you don't have that freedom and that access to the source code. So that's sort of why I started using Zotero and why I continue to use Zotero. There's basically three moving pieces to the client or to Zotero. One is the client, which I hope everyone has downloaded. Is that correct? Good. One is the connector to your browser. So when you've downloaded Zotero in your browser, you'll have a button at the top that is a Zotero connector. And then also you have another connector to Microsoft Word, or if you prefer to write in Google Docs, there's a Zotero connector to Google Docs. And so those are the three basic things that you need to have in order to make this run. So with that, I think what I'm gonna quickly demo is how to collect citations, how to take notes, how to make a bibliography, meaning insert citations into a Word doc. So I'm going to go over that pretty quickly, but if there's any questions, please put them in the chat. And as I said, Kathy, Ron, and Zach will try to answer those questions as they come up. And if they're bigger, more in-depth questions, I'll answer them at the end. Okay. Everybody good? Okay. So you should have gone to zotero.org and downloaded the client. During the download process, you should have gotten both the Zotero client, which also installs a connector into your Word doc or your Microsoft Word, and the Zotero connector for your web browser. Just a note on that, right now, Zotero works with Chrome and Firefox and a couple of other browsers, but they're having trouble with Safari. So if you're a Safari user right now, there's an issue and you can't use the Zotero connector for Safari doesn't work. So that's why I'm in Chrome today. Hopefully soon they'll fix that. I'm normally a Safari user, so I like that a lot better. So once you let's take a quick look at the Zotero client. Zotero breaks things down into libraries, so you can think of the library as a project, or any sort of way you want to organize it, or you can dump everything into my library and organize it through keywords, through tags, or other sorts of ways. I like to just create a library for a project, because then I have all the citations right there for that project. So I've named a library project testing. And the way you do that is you go to File and you say New Collection and install there. If you haven't yet, do delve into the preferences for Zotero, because there's a lot of different things you can do with Zotero. One of the things that I like to do is to automatically take snapshots when you're on a web page and you want to save a citation. Zotero will save a snapshot of that page, and especially if you're citing like a blog or some person's personal page that might change very frequently, having a snapshot of the page that you are citing, at that moment that you cited it. When you go back to it, you can then refer to it, and it's a really good tool to do that. You can also automatically attach associated PDFs, and that's really helpful for when you're trying to when you're downloading articles from article databases. So when you find a citation, it'll download both the citation and the PDF. That doesn't work with all databases, but many of them it works for that, and it's a good way to manage your PDFs rather than having one big download folder. And you can see here I have one citation and I have a snapshot of this is a New York Times article, and I have a snapshot to that saves that snapshot on my local machine. So that's pretty handy. The other things that you can do, the sync is also interesting. You can sync your local library with your Zotero account, and that means that you can get access to your citations anywhere that you're online. If you don't have your laptop with you, you can still get back to your citations. So that's pretty handy to do. Let's see, I won't really talk about export site. Here's the different styles that I talked about. Here's American Sociological Association, American Psychological Association, Chicago Manual Style, literally hundreds of different ones, and you can get additional styles. If you're writing for a specific journal, many journals have their own citation style. Here's Cell, for example, Elsevier, Harvard Reference Format, IEEE. Lots of them have their own styles that are based loosely off of the big three, I would say, are Chicago, APA, and MLA. Those are sort of the big three that are out there. You can get additional styles on the Zotero website to help with that. So pretty handy there. Word processors, you can install the Microsoft Word plugin here. If it didn't install when you downloaded the client, you can get it here. And then there's some advanced features like files and folders where you want Zotero to save all of your PDFs. You can change that if you want. Yeah, different feeds and shortcuts. These are keyboard shortcuts for working with the client. So if you're a fan of keyboard shortcuts, there's lots of those there, and you can set your own. So that's basically how the client looks. In your left-hand column, you'll have your library and your project folders. In the center column, you'll have your citations, and then in the right column, you'll have each of the actual metadata for the citations. So the information there will be the title and the author, the abstract, publication, all of those regular things that you see. You can also set different tags. Zotero is nice because for some databases, when you find an article or a newspaper article like a New York Times, it'll have keywords, and it'll download those keywords as tags. But you can also add new tags if you want, infrastructure. You can set that up, and it'll show up in the left-hand side. Then another nice feature is a notes feature. So when you're reading an article or a book or a newspaper article, and maybe you want to save a passage from there, or you want to write down your own thoughts. This is a quick and easy note-taking feature. And there's that in there. It automatically gets saved and it automatically gets indexed. So when you do searches in Zotero, down here, you can also newspaper. I might have to I think I have to do this first to re-index. Eventually those notes get indexed as well. It might take a minute or two to get those indexed. But then when you search, you can search for notes, you can search for citations, you can search for libraries. The search feature is pretty powerful. The search also indexes the PDFs that you save, and so you can search for those PDFs too. So that's basically the nickel tour of the client. So now let's go and try to save. Oh, before I go, I wanted to make sure you know, on the Zotero website, they have a really great documentation section and a forum section for if you have problems, if you have issues, if something is happening that you're not sure why it's happening or why it's not happening, you can go to the documentation or the forums. There's a search feature there. And you know, this Zotero has been around for, probably 15 years at least. And so if you have a problem, chances are somebody else has had a problem and figured out how to deal with that problem. So do check the documentation and the forums to if you do run into problems. And of course, you can always email me and I can try to help too. So as I said, so are there any questions so far? We're all good? Kathy, we're all good in the chat?
Yep.
Okay, good. So as I said, Zotero works really well natively in the web browser. When you go to New York Times, you're reading an article, and the Zotero button will show up in your web browser. Now this button will change based on, you see the icon just changed to a rolled up newspaper, because it knows that, oh, come on. I'm going to go back to the home page. I didn't log into New York Times, so it's asking me to log in. But that icon will change. So if you're in a book site and Zotero knows that the embedded metadata is a book, it'll change that icon to a book or a journal article or a newspaper article, something like that. Let's see if we can just find a free one. There we go. They're not going to ask me for that. Oh, they are. Bummer. Well, can I save the citation anyway? I can. So I clicked on the save the citation. I have to move this over because because all of you are on my right-hand pane. But I can then save that citation to any of the libraries that I have, and you'll see it saving a snapshot in this case. So I'm doing that. And then we'll go back to the client. And you'll see that that citation was saved. Now, because I didn't log in, it actually didn't do all of the work that I wanted it to do. So it's thinking that it's just a web page. This previous one, I was logged in, so it's thinking it's a newspaper article. All of these fields are editable, which is good because sometimes some databases don't grab all of the metadata, all of the information that you need. And so you might need to, you'll see here, I got the title, but I didn't get an author, I didn't get a date, I didn't get an abstract, I can change this to a newspaper article, but it didn't grab any of that other information, even though both of these citations are coming from the New York Times. But since this one I didn't log into, it didn't grab all of the information. But you can go in and edit that if you want. Oops. and all of that will be then part of the citation. So everything's pretty fast and easy. Let's go to another site. Here's YouTube. You know, I can say, oh, here's a broadcast. This icon changes now to what looks like a DVD, but it's a YouTube article or a YouTube video. And there's NBC Nightly News broadcast. And all of that information is in there. Here's Searchworks catalog. I did a search for environmental education. This is one of the cool things too, is if you have a list of search results, Zotero can see, oh, there's a lot of information here. Which ones do you want? And so the connector is now a folder, and it's giving me all of the titles that are on that first page, and I can select the ones that I want, and those will all be put into my library. And you'll see that those three were saved along with a library catalog link. And so we're already getting lots of information in our library. Now, Searchworks is one of those databases where, depending on what the material is that you're looking at in the library catalog, sometimes you don't get all of the information you need. And so sometimes you might have to, you know, like with a citation, lots of citations want a place and a publisher, but sometimes the place doesn't come with the in Searchworks. So sometimes you do have to look at your citations, and you might have to copy material from the library catalog into Zotero. It's not perfect, but it's closer to perfect than if you were just, you know, finding some books and then later on you have a book in hand and you want to cite it in your article or in your research paper. The database, or the Zotero, also works really well with article databases. That was what it was originally meant to do for. So this is the list of the library's subscription databases. If you just go to databases.stanford.edu, it'll give you the list of all of them. There's 2,500 or so that we subscribe to. So here's Academic Search Premier, for example. This is a pretty general multidisciplinary database, and it'll ask you to log in with your SUNET ID and all. And when you do that, if I do a search for environmental education, this is another one of those databases where it will give you that folder. So it knows that there are multiple items that could be saved, and you can just grab whatever the ones you want. So we'll just go back to basics and the political dimension. Now, since that back to basics does have a PDF. So we'll do that. And then, as you'll see, hopefully, come on. There we go. Back to basics. Oh, it didn't save my PDF. Darn. Oh, now it's saving it. See, there's a new attachment. Sometimes it takes a second to do. But here's your citation for that article. This is from PLOS One. And here's your PDF. So you can just double click on that PDF and it'll open the PDF up. You can write your notes and go from there. Now there's one other fun way to get citations into your Zotero library, and that's just by dragging and dropping. So if I have you know, a bunch of articles that I've done that I've downloaded in my downloads folder or whatever, and now I'm just starting to use Zotero, I can go back to my downloads folder, copy those PDFs, and just drag them in. Come on. There we go. And what Zotero does, which is very cool, is you'll notice the PDF, you know, those were just randomly named journal.pwn.zotero 0247850. But Zotero figured out that that was actually an article, and it went and grabbed the article citation. So you don't have to go back and see. Most of the time, you don't have to go back and get that information. Zotero will do it automatically. Zotero works really well with what are called DOIs, and what those are is permanent URLs for mostly for journal articles. For scientific literature too, DOIs are quite common. And so Zotero knew that this article it had a DOI in the article metadata. So it went out, grabbed all the metadata and pulled it back in, which was really cool. Now this one, you'll notice in the creator field, the creator field is blank because this PDF that I dragged and dropped, it couldn't find any other information. And so you'll see it's not perfect. And then sometimes you do have to go in and fill in the metadata. Any questions so far? Cool. Okay. Let's now go to, since we've now collected a bunch of materials, a bunch of citations. Now let's go and see how those work. So I'm in Microsoft Word. I'll show it off in Google Docs as well. But I copied this text from that New York Times article, and so just pretend that I'm writing a report. If I want to cite this passage, I put my cursor right there, and you'll see that Zotero is in my toolbar for Microsoft Word, and I can add a citation. So what it does, it goes in, it pops up a window for Zotero, excuse me. And where was that? There's the Biden details. So I can click on the citation that I want and say, okay. It puts the footnote in there and it puts the citation in there. Pretty easy peasy. I can also, I can change the document preferences. So if I had it set for Chicago Manual of Style and then I wanted it to go to APA, I could change that, and it automatically changed it to APA style. Now with APA style, these are in-site or in-text citations. With the APA style, at the end, you'll need to add your bibliography. So that's pretty easy, right? It formats everything really nicely. You can also, let me start a new document. If you just want to share your bibliography, you can do that. Come on. No, sorry. Sometimes it takes a second. So say you just want to share your bibliography. Oh, I see. To do that, you go into your client, and I think if you select some, and you can right click and you can export those items, you can create a bibliography from those items. And you can, choose your style, whatever. And this is, it's going to open it up as an RTF, which is a text format, which you can open in Microsoft Word or any of those other things. Let's put it in my Zotero test. Here's my test bibliography. Well, I'm just going to open it in BB Edit for now. So there's my bibliography. It doesn't look so nice in my text editor in BB Edit, but it looks fine if you open it in Microsoft Word. And you can you can easily send that to your professor if he or she asks you, what are you working on? Let me see what you've found so far. You can quickly and easily do that. Same works in Google Docs. That's that same text. I'll add a citation. And I want to do the Biden details as it's working, and you'll see the footnotes in there, and the end note is automatically embedded as well. So as you can see, it's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. It's not perfect all the time, but it will save you a lot of time in the end, especially when you're writing your report, or your research paper or your thesis. This will save you a ton of time, and save you from pulling out your hair by trying to figure out, oh, is the title supposed to be italicized, or is it supposed to be in quotes, or all of that stuff. Zotero takes care of that for you, so it's really nice. I think let me just quickly mention one other thing. Zotero has this thing called groups. So it's sort of a social media kind of thing, or collaborative kind of thing, where you can set up a private or a public group. If you're doing a group project or a group paper, you can set up a group on Zotero on the website. Groups. And that will allow you to share citations, share PDFs with the people in your group. So there are public groups and there are private groups. The private groups you can actually share PDFs, but the public groups you cannot, because if it's a public group, anybody can get in, and so they don't allow you to share PDFs because of copyright and licensing issues. But if you create a private group, like for example, I have a lot of private groups because I have a lot of group projects that I'm doing. When I save a citation to this group, it automatically updates in anybody else in their Zotero, anybody else that's in the group. So it's a really nice way to save materials, to share citations, to share PDFs with others if you're working together. One last thing. Zotero is free, and it comes with 300 megabytes of storage. Now that might not sound like a whole lot, but I have been using Zotero for a long time, and I just this year I ran up against the maximum storage, and so beyond that, there's Zotero has an annual fee. It's pretty small. It's like $20 for a year. Excuse me, $20 annually, and you get I think a gig, or in larger increments, you can get more storage. You can mitigate that if you don't connect your Zotero client to your Zotero website, to your username on your Zotero website. Because basically, when I've connected my Zotero client to the Zotero account in Zotero.org, all of the metadata, all of the data is shared. It's on my local machine, but it's also on the cloud. It's also at Zotero.org. So you can mitigate that if you want by not connecting it to your account. But I would highly recommend looking at groups, and you know, Zotero is a great project. It's been alive for a long time. It's built by scholars in the digital humanities at George Mason, and so you know they're not trying to make tons of money. They're just trying to keep the project going. And so I would highly recommend, you know, just throwing them $20 or something if you can. It always helps. And as I said, I'm not paid by Zotero. I don't know anybody who works for Zotero. At least I don't know them personally, so I'm not getting any benefit out of that. So with that, I think I'll leave it there and see if there are any questions. Let me stop sharing my screen.
There's none in the chat so far, but I have one.
Okay.
With groups, can you tell who has put something in there?
Yes, you can. Let me share my screen again and I'll show you that. So here is a group that I work on. One of these columns, I believe, I thought there was a way to see who was it that that created that.
Well, there is the creator column, but I
Yes,
assume that's the author.
That's more the author. Yep. There used to be a column that you could see. Oh, that's just the ones that have attachments. There's creator. Oh, you know what? On the website, I think. Let me log in here.
Sorry, I did not mean to ask a tough question.
No, that's a good question. I think on here it tells who it was that no, maybe not. Interesting.
Okay, well, we've got another question.
Okay. What's the other question? I guess the answer is no.
From Maddie. If you upload a marked PDF to your citation, does it preserve the highlights, annotations, etc.?
That is a good question. I believe so. I believe if you upload a PDF, no matter what kind of PDF, if you've marked it up or haven't marked it up, it should do that. I have not tried to do that because I generally don't annotate my PDFs. I used to do that, but for some reason I became lazy. And now mostly what I do is when I'm writing, I add a note instead of marking up the PDF. But the tricky part of that is if you upload your PDF and then continue to do markup on it, you might not get those newer markups or those newer notes. I don't know if the PDF is live per se. Maybe you could test that out and let me know.
So Ben has a question. Ben, do you want to ask your question?
Sure, yeah. Is it possible to upload citations directly into the body of a document, like for a works cited at the end, as opposed to kind of always into the footnotes? I've had difficulty transmitting them from the footnotes into the body of the document.
So I think what you mean is that's sort of a style question. There are some styles, like this was APA style, that just has the in-text citation and then creates a bibliography at the end. Whereas Chicago Manual of Style does the footnote style. Is that what you're meaning? So that
Yes,
you know
thank
you
you.
have
I think that solves my question. I use Chicago,
Yeah.
so that would explain it.
Yeah, and I think Chicago has a couple of different styles too. So I think, try the author date. That should change it to something that's similar to APA with a bibliography at the end. So that's a style question. And then you can misspell bibliography and put it at the end. The nice thing too is that bibliographies have to be alphabetized, and Zotero does that alphabetization as well. So have you all played with Zotero at all, or have you not gotten your hands dirty yet?
I've started to make my library for my thesis, but it was helpful to see everything today.
Excellent. I'm glad, Grace. Well, I can stick around for a little while. We've got 15 minutes left in the session if you want to delve in and see if you have any issues or other questions come up. And if not, we can just end, and I'll give you 15 minutes back of your time today.
James, can I share my personal inspiration for
Yeah,
this?
Please.
I feel like for people, especially who have never used these tools before, the focus always is on a particular paper or your thesis when you go in. So you kind of learn the tool that way. But if you think about it, you are basically creating your own knowledge base. So say the first paper you have stuff, but now you've got notes attached to articles. So then you're writing a second paper, then you don't have to go back. You can search your own database, your own lit review, and you can slowly start building your corpora of all of the literature you've read or researched with all the notes. And then all you have to do then is you can start by searching your Zotero libraries for possible articles, create a new library with those articles as a starting point. And then if those are good enough, then you can just write your whole new article and then just cite, just pull in the citations from there. So at a certain point, it becomes a memory tool for you as you're building your corpora of your literature. So I think that was the one thing that in the beginning, you just think, okay, I just need to do this paper. And then everything's there. And then you forget it. And then you never really take advantage of the stuff, or you don't put those notes in that you can then go back and review, after a month when you've forgotten what that article was about.
Yeah, that's a great point, Ron. That's really how I use it. I've been using it, as I said, for many years, and I have lots of different libraries and lots of different citations. And over time, you start to build up because most of my work is in government information and Freedom of Information Act and sunshine laws and those kinds of things. So over time, I've built up my own library, if you will, of interesting articles and notes to those articles. So yeah, it's a great way to do it.
I definitely would have never thought about that. So thank you so much for that comment. I'm gonna head out because I have to go to class, but I just want to thank you again for hosting this
Grace.
workshop.
My pleasure. Oh, before you go, one more thing. Since Zotero is free, your library, you can take it with you if and when you leave Stanford. That's another reason to save the PDFs on your local machine rather than just a link to JSTOR or whatever database, because all of those are yours to keep forever.
That's awesome. Thank you so much again. Thank you guys
my
all.
pleasure, Grace.
Bye. Have a good day.
Thanks, you as well. And if there are no other questions, I think I'll let the two of you go, and or the three of you. And I really appreciate your time today. And please email me if you have any questions. jrjacobs@stanford.edu. Thank you, and thank you, Ron and Kathy and Zach, who's already gone, for helping me out. I hope it was clear.
It was good. You do a good job of explaining this, and you use real examples, which is always good to do. And I think, I mean, what usually happens, of course, is then they have to go and actually
Yeah.
dive into it, and they'll say, well, I remember James said something about this that I think I can do. And then, I mean, that's how they really learn, but you've given them enough of a foundation where I think
Yep.
they can go off on their own. So
Yep,
I think you did
exactly.
a great job.
Hey, have you guys, you all have used, you've recorded Zoom sessions before, right?
Right. Are
I,
we still being recorded?
let me turn the recording off.